We stood on the threshold of the unknown, watching the huge success of Snow White and feeling the pressure that hung over us like a dark cloud. Could we create something even greater? Could our hands bring to life a new story that would touch the hearts of millions? The fear of failure was real. Disney expected perfection, and any mistake could cost the studio its future. We knew that Pinocchio was more than a tale about a wooden boy. It was a test for each of us, a test of our imagination, skill, and courage. We sat in the writer's room for a long time, often arguing, rewriting scenes 5 times, sometimes 10. Every word had weight. Could we convey Pinocchio's fear when he faced evil? Could we evoke sympathy for him when he made mistakes? Would his story be too scary for children and too banal for adults? This constant question tormented us like an invisible voice that kept us awake at night. The animators worked with incredible precision. We looked at the wooden movements, at the eyes that had to reflect every fear, every hope, every small victory. Every frame could be a miracle or a failure. The pressure was enormous. Mistakes could cost the studio dearly, and the deadlines did not allow for slow work. Can we prove that Pinocchio is real, that he is alive? Will the audience feel his heart the way we feel his? And then there was color. Technicolor promised to create a world that breathed, a world that was both magical and terrifying, a world that would make you laugh and hold your breath. But the technology was new, unknown, and we were afraid of failure. What if the colors didn't convey the emotion? What if the magic disappeared on the screen? We risked everything because we believed that only through this risk could true miracles be created. We lived a movie every day. Quarrels, fear, and excitement were combined with inspiration and a thirst to create. Was it worth it to worry so much? Will all these hours, nights, and tears pay off? Will we be able to create something that will survive time and become a classic? We didn't know, but we knew one thing. We had to try, because only by trying the impossible can you touch true magic. As the film got into full swing, we began to feel that the fear and pressure hadn't gone away. They had become a constant companion. Every animator knew that a bad shot could ruin hours of work, and each scene had to be so vivid that the viewer forgot about the real world. We asked ourselves, can we make Pinocchio so real that his joy, sadness, and fear were transmitted through the screen? We spent days, sometimes nights, watching the movements, experimenting with shadows, light, and color, but the fear of making a mistake never went away. In one of the scenes where Pinocchio is trapped by the fox and the cat, the animators argued about his facial expression. Some feared that he would look too scared for children, while others insisted that the fear had to be palpable to make the scene believable. We were faced with a choice. Should we play it safe and risk losing the emotional impact? Or should we give the audience a genuine fear that might scare them, but also touch their hearts? This question haunted us every day, and the answer was sought in every new sketch, every additional line of movement. The technical innovations only increased the pressure. Using Technicolor opened up incredible possibilities, but at the same time demanded precision. Every color, every shade could change the mood of the scene. We asked ourselves, would the blue of Geppetto's room convey the warmth of his home? Would the red of the circus scene be too aggressive? These details may have seemed small, but they were what created the magic, and at the same time the fear of failure. At the same time, the pressure from the company was relentless. Management constantly asked about deadlines, the impact of scenes, and the potential for box office success. Every decision had financial consequences, and the fear of disappointing the company ate away at us from the inside. We wondered, would we have the courage to finish the film? Would our fear break our artists and animators? And yet, it was this fear that pushed us to work even harder, to find new ways to bring the characters to life and make their emotions real. Alongside the technical and creative challenges, we struggled with our own insecurities. We saw Pinocchio come to life under our hands, and at the same time we felt the fear that he might not touch the audience, that our efforts would be in vain. Every movement of the eyes, every line of the lips, all this was part of the test. Could we convey his soul? We asked ourselves the question, would the audience feel joy when Pinocchio turns into a real boy? Would they understand that every mistake he made was a lesson we wanted to convey? And it was in this tension, in the combination of fear, pressure, and inspiration, that a truly magical world was born. Pinocchio became not just a wooden boy, but a symbol of risk, struggle, and creative breakthrough. We felt that every moment of fear, every minute of doubt made the film more alive, more real. And we knew, even if the audience did not initially understand all the depth, the film would remain a classic, because behind it lies the truth of our emotions and our hearts. We were facing a moment that could change everything. The studio, fresh from the huge expenses of Snow White, expected us to deliver another hit, and any failure could jeopardize Disney's future. The real challenge was in the numbers. The budget for Pinocchio had grown to an incredible $2.5 million for the time, and every dollar was under the watchful eye of management. Could we justify the expense? Would the financial pressure break our artists and animators? Would our talent be enough to turn a tree into a? We felt the fear that permeated every room in the studio. Every animator knew that a mistake was not just an aesthetic loss, but a real threat to finances and reputation. One day we were ordered to reshoot a key scene with Fox and the cat because management was afraid that the children would not understand the conflict and the adults would be bored. It was a moment when creativity collided with the harsh reality of business. We asked ourselves how to find a balance between fear, danger. At the same time, we were struggling with technical limitations. The scene with Pinocchio dancing and moving to the music was more difficult than any shot in Snow White. The shots overlapped, the colors didn't match the mood, and we felt like the whole project was going to fall apart. We wondered, could we bring the character to life in a way that made the viewer feel his fear, joy, and hope all at once? Would Technicolor allow us to convey the full spectrum of emotion? But it was in these challenges that magic was born. Fear and pressure did not paralyze us, but pushed us to look for new solutions. We experimented with shadows, movements, facial expressions, because we understood, if we do not take risks now, we will never create a real fairy tale. And even when our hearts clenched with fear of failure, we continued to work because we believed Pinocchio deserves to live, and the chance to create something that will survive time. We were on the verge of collapse and triumph at the same time. The film Pinocchio already lived in our thoughts, in sketches, in the movements of the animators, but the reality of the studio was ruthless. Every frame, every shadow, every color was not just an aesthetic choice, but a potential reason for failure. Management constantly reminded us, the budget is huge, the audience is demanding, and if this film does not succeed, disaster awaits us all. We felt it like a heavy stone on our chest. Can we withstand this pressure? Can our team turn fear into creative power? One of the most terrifying moments was the process of animating the scenes where Pinocchio had to come to life, show human emotions, and at the same time remain a wooden boy. We watched the wood move, trying to understand how a tree could look alive. The animators spent hours in front of the sketches, repeating the movements dozens of times. Sometimes it seemed that we would never achieve the necessary believability. We asked ourselves, would the audience feel his fear? Would they understand his joy? Could we make the tree become a symbol of real emotions? The pressure from the studio added to the fear. Different managers came to us every day, checking sketches, discussing deadlines, budgets, and potential revenues. Once we were called into an emergency meeting, the management was worried about the fox and the cat scene. They were afraid that children would not understand the plot, and adults would find it boring. We felt that every decision we made could lead to financial disaster. Could we make the scene scary and funny at the same time? Could we find a balance between danger and charm? Another challenge was the musical scenes. Jiminy Cricket and the orchestras were working on themes that were supposed to bring Pinocchio to life, but the characters' movements didn't always match the rhythm of the music. We were faced with the dilemma. Should we change the music or the animation? Each attempt to solve this issue could take days, weeks, and time was running out. We constantly asked ourselves, can we combine sound and movement in a way that conveys emotions as naturally as possible? Won't we ruin the magic if we compromise? Sometimes the fear became so strong that the crew felt physically exhausted. Many stayed up late into the night, reviewing footage, drawing new sketches, experimenting with shadows and light. We knew that every mistake was costly, but it was fear that pushed us to look for new solutions. Could we afford to rest? Could we risk every frame, knowing that the success of the film depended on it? And yet, in each challenge, an energy was born that turned fear into inspiration. One of the most difficult moments was the scene, I See the World, where Pinocchio experiences freedom and the joy of life for the first time. The animators tried to convey happiness in a way that did not look artificial, but every movement, every look seemed imperfect. We stood over the sketches for hours, rewriting, correcting until we felt that this was a real moment of magic. Will the viewer be able to feel this happiness the same way we did? Can this scene become a moment that will remain in the hearts forever? And here came the next hook, the fox and the cat, the circus and the stage traps. All this could destroy the balance of emotions. We were afraid that the funny would become scary, and the scary, banal. Every frame could break the story. Can we find a fine line where fear and humor live together without destroying each other? Can we prove that Pinocchio is not just a fairy tale, but a full-fledged story about fear, hope, and growth? And even when it seemed that we had everything under control, the financial pressure never left us. Every day there were reports about the budget, costs, and deadlines. The studio could close the project at any moment if it did not look promising. We constantly asked ourselves, will we have the courage to see it through? Will we be able to turn fear into a creative breakthrough? And it was in these questions that the magic was born, because we knew. Only through fear and pressure can a true miracle be created. This stage of work was a test for each of us, for animators, screenwriters, musicians, and directors. Will we be able to combine all the details, emotions, and techniques into a harmonious story? Will we have enough patience, strength, and faith? Will we be able to create a film that will survive time and become a classic? Every decision, every frame, every experiment is a step into the unknown that could lead to triumph or failure. The day of the premiere arrived, and our entire world was reduced to the dark hall of the cinema, where Pinocchio was to come to life on the screen. Our hearts were trembling with fear. We knew that not only the audience was waiting behind the scenes, but also the critics, the studio management, and the whole world were waiting for the miracle that we had created. Would they appreciate our work? Would they see what we felt when we drew every frame, corrected every movement, worried about Pinocchio as if he were real? The sounds of music filled the hall, and a little wooden boy appeared on the screen. The first scene made us hold our breath. Pinocchio came to life, and his movements, fear, hope, and joy became visible to everyone. But the hall was silent. Did they feel it? Would the magic we had put into the film really work on the audience? We looked at the faces in the hall, catching every reaction, and our hearts clenched with fear of failure. And then the first hitch happened, the scene with the fox and the cat, which worried us the most. Every movement of the characters was a test for the audience, because it combined danger and humor, fear and comedy. We asked ourselves, will the audience be able to understand the fine line, not be scared and not doubt the fairy tale? And then, laughter. Light, sincere laughter. We felt that the magic had worked. Then came the musical scenes, the dancing, Jiminy Crab, and the orchestra that brought Pinocchio to life. Every movement, every look, every shadow and color, everything became one. We watched the screen and felt the fear and pressure turn into a triumph of creativity. But the audience didn't yet know that behind the scenes lay months of doubt, sleepless nights, fear of financial failure, and the struggle for every emotion. But here's the next hook, the critics. We awaited their reviews with fear, because even success at the premiere did not guarantee financial triumph. When the first reviews appeared, our hearts were ready to strike. Someone wrote about the touching tale, someone about technical innovations, someone noted the emotionality of the characters. And only then did reality set in. The financial result did not meet expectations. The fear returned, but now it was different. It was mixed with pride that we had created something incredible. And so we asked ourselves, was it worth taking the risk with such a budget? Did the fear and pressure justify the effort? Did we create real magic? The answer did not come instantly, but years later, when Pinocchio became a classic, a benchmark for animation and a source of inspiration for generations. The fear and pressure that once seemed to paralyze us became the driving force of creativity. They forced us to ask questions, look for unconventional solutions, and not stop, even when everything seemed impossible. We realized that every moment of fear and doubt was the key to true magic. Could anyone at the studio have predicted that Pinocchio would overcome all odds and become a legend? Could we have known that our sleepless nights and conversations about the correct movement of the wooden boy's hand would leave a mark on culture forever? And although financial success came later, we knew that true value is not in the numbers, but in the ability to create emotions, touch hearts, and leave a legacy for future generations. After all the fear, the pressure, and the sleepless nights, there came a moment of realization. We sat together, watching the footage come to life on the screen, and we felt not just pride, but something deeper, the realization that we had created something real. Pinocchio was no longer just a wooden boy. He had become a symbol of the struggle, the risk, and the dream that every creator embodies. We asked ourselves, could we have imagined that this little character would one day touch the hearts of millions of people around the world? We mentioned the financial pressure and the fear of failure. In the early years, the film did not bring much profit, and it seemed that all our efforts were in vain. But over time, Pinocchio became a classic, a benchmark for animation, and an inspiration for new generations of artists and animators. We understood the real value is not in instant success, but in the ability to create a story that will survive time, touch hearts, and teach us to look at the world a little differently. The impact of Pinocchio on animation was incredible. Every frame we worked on was a lesson for future artists. How to convey emotion through movement, how to combine humor and drama, how to take risks and not be afraid of failure. We asked ourselves, is it possible to recreate such magic today? Will new teams have the courage to experiment and take risks? And the answer was obvious. Yes, if they are ready to give themselves to the work completely, like we once did. With fear and pressure in mind, we learned a key lesson. It is through hardship that true creativity is born. Every moment of doubt, every mistake, and every correction shaped the soul of the film. Could we have made Pinocchio without these challenges? Probably not. Fear forced us to look for new ways. Pressure forced us to work harder, and doubt forced us to ask questions that deepen the story. And so we look at the legacy of Pinocchio. It taught us that a fairy tale can be complex and scary, but at the same time magical and inspiring. It showed that even a wooden boy can become a symbol of human feelings and dreams. We left behind an example of how fear and pressure do not destroy, but help create magic. We asked ourselves, are we ready to take risks again? Are the next generations of animators ready to use fear and pressure as a source of strength, not limitation? And the answer was obvious. Only the brave are able to create legends. We learned another important lesson. Success is not always instant. Pinocchio didn't bring in much revenue at first, but its influence and significance grew over time. Should we be afraid of temporary setbacks? Should we stop because of fear of criticism or financial risks? The answer is no. It is through these challenges that true creativity is born, and it is they that make a story unforgettable. And today we look at Pinocchio and feel pride and admiration. The little wooden boy, created by the hands of fear, pressure, and inspiration, has become a part of our lives and the culture of the world. He reminds us that even in the most difficult moments, it is worth continuing to work, taking risks, and believing in the magic that we can create with our own hands.